Hi, friends. Welcome. Welcome to what we're calling 5 tips for writing an outstanding college essay this summer. Um, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm Ethan. I'm the college essay guy. And I got that. I was sort of bestowed that name, or I guess got it about, I guess it's been about, it was 2012. So I've been the college essay guy for about 13 years. And I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. So today, what we're going to be talking about is what even is a personal statement about? What's the point of it? I have like a formulated phrase that you can like write down if you're a note taker. I'm going to talk about topics that I would recommend avoiding, based on conversations with, I don't know, hundreds of college admission officers over the years, and some very recent. I was presenting at a conference last week, and I've been talking with admission officers lately about this. So I'm going to share some practical ways to actually find a personal statement topic that'll potentially help you stand out if you are a student, or you can pass it along to your student and be like, "Hey, this college essay guy said here are some things that you can do." We're going to talk about core values. It's kind of a joke around here that every time Ethan talks about core values, everybody drinks water. And I'm going to share a couple different examples of personal statements, share just a little bit about my online summer courses that are coming up, and then Q&A. Housekeeping, yes, it's recorded. You'll see that at the top. You'll get it. You'll get the links. Captions are at the bottom. Use the Q&A box if you got questions, if you got Qs, because I've got As. And then there's a little live session survey poll that we'll throw in there. Jasmine, if it's easy to find that. Sorry, I didn't prep you for that. Jasmine and Kate are our moderators today. Shout out. If you could throw that in, that would be super lovely. And yeah, in fact, you know what? Let's do for funsies. If you fill out the live session survey poll, we'll do a little book giveaway at the end. Someone remind me if I forget to do the book giveaway. But maybe based on who fills it out, Jasmine, if you could like randomly pick, I don't know, caller number 11, like the 11th person to fill it out, and we'll give away a free book. So if you've never heard of College Essay Guy before, officially, I started doing this in 2003, like helping students on their essays, but officially started College Essay Guy about 10 years ago. We want to bring more ease, joy, and purpose to people's lives. Yes, through the college admission process, but that's what I'm hoping to bring. There's like a larger aim here. We love, love, love giving away free resources. We had a few million people on the website last year. A lot of the resources go out on YouTube, so smash that like button. No, a lot of it goes out. We have weekly videos that go out on YouTube. And some people don't know this, but we offer one-on-one support. In fact, that's how we help keep the lights on. And for students who identify as low income, we have a bunch of students that we support each year with free essay and application support. So we'll share a link to that. Maybe we could share a link to Match Lighters and to our one-on-one link, Jasmine, in the chat. Thanks. Me, I went to Northwestern, then UC Irvine, written a couple books on this topic. So, hey, I'm legit, I promise. I moved around a bunch as a kid because I was an MK, which sometimes means military kid, but actually means missionary kid, which meant I got pretty good at asking people deep questions to get to know them quickly. And then I think that's some of what inspired me. If I were rewriting my personal statement, I'd probably talk about learning to ask deep questions, and developing that skill. And I used to want to play basketball, fun fact. That didn't work out, so I became college essay guy. So let's talk first about how important even is this thing. So last year, NACAC, which is the National Association of College Admission Counselors, released a State of College Admission report and they do this every year. Well, they took a break for COVID, but they released this report looking at what do colleges care about most. And if you take a look at this, you'll see, first of all, the top 3 things didn't really change from years past. Colleges, when they're evaluating an application, they look at GPA, your strength of school curriculum, which is to say how hard your courses were. And it used to be that up next was like tests, the admission test scores, SAT, ACT. But as you'll look, with COVID, with the test optional movement, that went way, way, way down. Now, a few selective schools have been in the news because they have brought tests back, but the majority of schools remain test optional, which means that students can apply and, yes, even get in without submitting their test scores. But new this year is they added this thing called positive character attributes, which what even is that? I have a whole podcast on this. But a positive character attributes are basically qualities like collaboration and initiative and intellectual vitality. basically qualities that you will bring to the college campus. And how do you find out about those things? Sometimes through the recommendation letters, but often it's through the essays. So in some ways, the essays have become even more important, especially when colleges are trying to differentiate one student from another when they have very similar profiles. Profiles meaning this student took AP Calc, this student took AP Calc. This student was the president of an important club, this student was a president of an important club. So when those profiles look similar, they're like, okay, what's going to tell these students apart? Oftentimes it's the writing pieces, especially at selective schools. What is the purpose of it? If you're the kind of person who takes notes, you can screenshot this or take out a pen. It's to demonstrate the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you, if you're a student, will bring to a college campus. But how do you even do that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So here are the 4 qualities, in my mind, of an outstanding, which is to say, an essay that will stand out in the college admission process. The first thing is values, core values. And we're going to do a little exercise later related to these. But I think this is where colleges really get information about what you're going to bring. That was a that was a very voice class moment for me. What are you going to bring to the campus? What are the things you care about most deeply? Is it social justice? Is it the environment? Is it your family? Is it what? What are those things? Next, and this is not, by the way, ranked, it's just another thing that colleges look for, is insight. They're wanting to know information in your personal statement that isn't elsewhere in your application. And I call these so what moments. So these are opportunities to show your ability to, think critically, to think creatively, to surprise us, basically. And I think it's great if an essay does this like 3 to 5 times, if possible. Next up is vulnerability, which is a kind of a charged term. And I'm not saying that you need to like share your deepest, darkest secrets or your, deepest pain. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, is the personal statement actually personal? Do we go beyond just like what's in your head and how you think into like a little bit of your heart? Can we feel what you're about? And then finally, craft. Craft is also a really loaded term because that can be like, problematic because, well, what's to say that's not super subjective? But what I mean by that is like, is it clear, logical, and does it represent a series of choices in like why you wrote this paragraph in this way, why you chose these words? So it represents something that you didn't just like dash off in 2 days. I've never actually seen an amazing personal statement done in 2 days, though I suppose it's possible. Usually, though, I'll say it takes longer than you think it's going to take. Okay, so in talking with a bunch of different admission officers, some things that are more likely to blend in are things like common extracurricular activities. So the football essay, the golf essay, the hashtag sports essay. Related to this, the injury essay, or the, what we won the big game or lost the big game. So you may know this, but also are these mission trip essays where a student basically goes overseas, usually, and they make a realization about their privilege. And then they come back and, they're like, wow, I have so much to be grateful for. I would say these are less common since COVID because there seems to be fewer mission trips nationally. Sometimes students want to write about changing schools and they're like, I went from this one school to this other school and it was so different and it was hard at first, but then it got better. And I just find that I've seen so many of those, and admission officers say they've seen so many of those. And that's something that you can put in the additional information section, or the education section, which is another separate part of the application where you could explain what that meant to you and how that impacted you. And then another one that's come up a lot recently is writing about anxiety or depression, mental health challenges. While these are sometimes so big in the mind of the student and they take up a lot of like your RAM, I find that that's something that in many cases can go in the additional information section. You can talk about what the challenge was and how it impacted you and what you did and what you learned and put it into bullet points and then leave your personal statement for writing about all other skills, qualities, values you're going to bring. And then similar to that is that, when students get a bad grade, like I got a C in physics, don't devote your whole personal statement to like making excuses or explaining a bad grade. Put it in your additional information section and use your personal statement for something else. What, you ask? Well, that's what we're going to get into. So I think that oftentimes students feel biased toward what we're going to call the narrative structure. So a narrative is a challenges-based essay that will be familiar to you from all the movies you've ever seen. And it's usually cause and effect. It's usually like, there's this thing that happened. which is sometimes in screenwriting terms called the inciting incident. A thing started like, basically flipped my world upside down, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then I did some stuff about it, and then I learned some stuff. And that is an okay structure, meaning it works, it's tried and true. I'm not saying on this session, don't do that, but there are so many other ways to write a personal statement. That narrative structure is often chronological. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. It's often about a challenge. But what I'm going to spend a lot of the time talking about today is another structure, which is what I call the montage. And a montage finds some kind of theme, and we're going to brainstorm some themes in a little bit, but it's something that you maybe know a lot about or love, and that you're able to connect to many different sides of you. And you don't have to jump around. You don't have to go like this happened, and this happened, and this happened. It could be that you connect this thing to something that happened in the 9th grade. And then you connect it to this other thing that happened like just last summer. And then you jump back to this other experience. And even though you're jumping around in time, the common thread or theme is what holds it together. And we're going to look at an example in just a minute. I think it's really important to know that you can do this and that it's not like better to write a challenges-based essay because maybe no one's told you that. But I want to assure you that it's a great way to show your skills, qualities, values, and interests, and you can get into great colleges using this structure. So what I mean by montage, if you remember that movie Up, we've got these images, Carl and Ellie meeting, falling in love, buying a house. We see their whole lives in 4 minutes. And that's kind of what you're trying to do here. You're not trying to necessarily tell your whole life, but you're being selective about the moments that you choose. And these represent important essences. I like to think of these kind of sometimes as bouillon cubes that represent a larger thing. So a few images here are going to tell the story. The goal here, again, is to share skills, qualities, values, and interests. We're using a common theme. This is broadly speaking, if you're not writing about a challenge, you need something to hold the essay together, and that thing is this theme. And you can kind of think of this as like beads in a bracelet. So when you're brainstorming a personal statement, when students will take my courses or I'll work with them, the first thing we got to figure out is like, what are all the beads? Which is to say, like, what are all the different sides of you that you might want to show? And I think of those as the beads. And then it's like, okay, once we've got all those different things, then what's going to connect them all? What's going to be the thread? In this case, literally in this image, the thread. So let me show you an example of this so that it's not theoretical. This is a student who took my course last year and who wrote about escape rooms. So the 4 qualities that I mentioned, I want you to see if you can kind of spot them. I'm going to point them out. But I think the first thing that I want you to know is like, yes, you could even write your essay about escape rooms. So here's the opening. Let's analyze it. And I want to share with you some things that I think we can learn from it. And that if you're writing an essay or you're, helping somebody or watching somebody write an essay in the coming months, that you can give them some tips. The United States is under attack. My eyes widened, listening to the words coming from the speaker. The nuclear missile program has been compromised, and you're now locked in the presidential bunker, moments away from war. That doesn't sound good. You have 60 minutes to disarm the missiles. Good luck. The fate of the world is in my hands. Okay, what I love about this hook, and the reason I call it a hook, is that this student is raising questions in our mind. So, quick tip, side note, pro tip, if you're trying to engage the reader, raise questions in their mind. In this case, the questions that are coming up for me as I'm reading this is like, wait, is the US under attack? No, it doesn't seem to be. What's going on? Who's talking? And is the fate of the world actually in the hands of the reader? It's kind of silly questions, but I'm curious, at least. Second paragraph. The fate of the world isn't actually in the hands of a 17-year-old girl, I hope. This is just the name of the game when it comes to escape rooms. Great. So the topic, which doesn't have the essay won't have a title, it doesn't need to, is escape rooms. And one of the things that's helping me as a reader know that is that it's mentioned at the end of the sentence. So it's psychologically, there's this little thing where that's the thing that we often remember the most. I first suggested my family attempt one when we started encountering communication issues. By the way, that's a quick smuggle in of a value of like, hey, I'm an advocate in my family for communicating. Love it. It's subtle, but it's there. Now, they're the tradition that brings us closer, allowing us to learn more about each other in a mind-bending way. However, the lessons I've taken away from escape rooms extend much further than this. Love it. This is what I call a college essay sentence here, and it's kind of like the launch for the essay. The impact that it has on an admission reader is like, Okay, if I was worried that this wasn't going to be a college essay, that the student wasn't quite sure what this was about, when I read this sentence, the lessons I've taken away from escape rooms, I'm relaxed. I'm more trusting, thinking that, okay, the student's going to rein it in. I'm going to learn about lessons from escape rooms. I'm intrigued, but I'm also like set at ease that this is going to be a college essay. Next paragraph. Okay, quick side note, see if you can spot values that are important to the student. The instant the timer starts ticking downwards, my eyes dart left and right. 60, 59, 59. Any of the various items meticulously placed around the treehouse's setting could serve as a vital puzzle piece. My analytical mind not only helps plan my getaway in the escape room, but also enables me to look after my community. See the values? These are kind of explicit, but I'm here for it. She mentions analytical mind. So she's like, I'm a thinker. And then at the end of the sentence, allows me to look after my community. So there, I would underline these if I could. We've got analytical mind and we've got community. Great. Tell me more. Living in Chicago's South Side, but attending a school near downtown, let me witness firsthand the disparities regarding funding and profitability between startups created by minorities in my predominantly African American community and non-minorities in the financial district. This observation prompted me to develop an entrepreneurship program, awesome, by the way, that introduces Black girls to resources needed to create their own businesses. Okay, yes, the student is smuggling in, and I use that term to mean like sort of like bringing in the extracurricular activity here. But the reason this works and doesn't feel too gauche or like hitting you over the head with it is that the student is mentioning values first, community, analytical mind, and then brings in the example of the thing they've done to show how they've developed, how that value is manifested in this case, her life. Love this. So if you look at so far, the word budget, it started off as an escape rooms essay, but it's not really about escape rooms. Notice that only the first two sentences, about 40 words, are about escape rooms. And then boom, we trampoline to the value, or the values in this case, that the student's going to bring to the college campus. Great. Give me some proof. Give me some evidence. The next, I don't know, 100 words or so are all about how that student has brought those qualities into their life. And then the end of the paragraph brings the insights, the so what. Check this out. Being Black is a substantial part of my identity, so it's important for me to see others of a similar complexion in a position to make a difference. Thank you for contextualizing this thing that you do and giving me information that's not probably in your activities list, because probably the activities list description is so short, she didn't really have room to say more about why do you even do this activity? Why did you start this program? Last sentence, I strive to make others feel represented. Yes, inclusion, another value, and my ability to analyze situations, call back to the earlier value, to create opportunities allows me to do this. So I already said a lot of the stuff I love about this, but big takeaway, even if the reader's skimming, I get commitment to community and service, which is, by the way, one of the things colleges love to see, and analytical mind. Love it. Next paragraph. The door to a second room opens. 3628, 3627. Escape rooms spark a sense of curiosity that I couldn't imagine gaining elsewhere. See the value? Now that one was in the middle of the sentence, so maybe you missed it, but it'll be repeated. Upon entering the Wizard of Oz, I'm left wondering how the trees placed before me are programmed to blink in Morse code. Why? Because I'm so darn curious. This curiosity extends into other aspects of my life. Yay, thank you for making this. Sometimes students will go wrong and they will make the escape room essay all about escape rooms, or all about golf, or all about grandmother who is so awesome. Let me tell you about my grandmother. But I want to encourage students to make your topic you. Your topic is not escape rooms. So you're like, what I like to say sometimes is like, your topic is not your topic. You're not writing about escape rooms. You're writing about the skills, qualities, values, and interests you've developed that have manifested in your life that, oh, by the way, also happen to connect back to escape rooms. I've never quite said it that way before. This curiosity extends to other aspects of my life. Great, tell me how. Leading me to question, for example, how Bernoulli's principle permits objects to levitate through air currents despite seemingly unbalanced forces. Hashtag geeky language. This is what I call this. This is a moment when a student lets me know they know some stuff about some stuff. And in this case, the student knows some stuff about Bernoulli's principle, which shows curiosity. Or, she continues, what the greatest possible length for a straw is, After dragging a tube-like model up 3 flights of stairs, I can confidently say 32 feet. By the way, bringing in a little humor, nice. I love a parenthetical. The creative facet of escape rooms also triggers my innovative spirit, new value. Though time-consuming, I enjoy scouring leftover craft supplies to find popsicle sticks for my latest Rube Goldberg machine, because it allows me to experiment with creating systems to solve everyday tasks. By letting my thoughts run wild and engaging in clever endeavors, I love the rhyme there, I gain a feeling of satisfaction knowing that someday the product of my doing will impact a project expanding beyond myself. By the way, she's dropping a hint about her future career, even though she's not naming it yet. Can you guess it? Can you guess so far? So far, we know that the student's curious, interested in, analyzing things, helping communities. You might be able to guess. I don't always, oh, by the way, what is the main value here? Well, I think there are a couple. One is curiosity, and that's the first half of the paragraph. And then we've got curiosity as it relates to innovation. And then there's a nice so what. So what are you going to do with this? I hope to basically help projects beyond, myself, or contribute to projects beyond myself. I don't always escape the rooms in time. The museum heist is an example. Ultimately, the challenge of squirming through vents and deactivating lasers triumphed over me. Yet, I left grateful knowing I'd be better prepared for our next puzzle. And I've worked hard to not let other setbacks deter me. Great. You see that transition? So there's like, I fail sometimes, but I try not to let that, hold me back. I was crushed after finding out I didn't advance to nationals my freshman year of Business Professionals of America, but after tweaking my presentation with the feedback provided, I emerged stronger the following year, earning second place. Thank you for contextualizing that award. I approach and showing another value. I approach every situation eager to participate, willing to fail, and determined to grow. Value, value, value. Because each experience enables me to seek improved solutions moving forward. Love the why, the so what, the insight. I've learned, and this is a nice insight too, I've learned that success comes with roadblocks, but outcomes are even more satisfying with a story to tell. Oh, it's so good. It's such a nice surprise. Like, I don't expect her to say that at the end of this paragraph. So that to me is when I say insight, I'm talking about, can you surprise the reader? And what I'll usually say to students is like, if you've said something that maybe like surprised you, that hit you with the force of insight, I think it's higher. There's a higher likelihood that you'll surprise the reader. And that's kind of hard, but that's one of the things that I think is valuable in this process is training students to sort of like look inward and to be able to sort of use their inner calibration about like, okay, what does feel like an insight? And oftentimes students will like, I'll read a thing to them and I'll be like a thing that they've written and be like 1 to 10, how insightful does that feel? 1 being like not at all, or 10 being like, yes, that was like a revelation. And usually students and I pretty well agree. Like they'll be like 4, and I'm like, yeah, it was a 4 for me, maybe a 3. And then it's like, great. So how do we come up with something that's a little bit more insightful, a little more surprising? And that often takes time. But it's fun to show them examples. They can kind of start to see how this works. All right, I'm ready to enter the next stage of my life as, ta-da, an engineer with the insights that escape rooms have given me. Maybe I am prepared to have the fate of the world in my hands after all. So this is the ending. I think it's lovely. It reveals engineer without sort of taking away the, let's say like stealing the thunder of potential supplemental essays. So this student had to write essays for USC, which is where the student's going to end up going, for Yale, for a whole bunch of other selective schools. And some of those schools have supplemental essays where they'll be like, why do you want to study what you want to study? For example, USC has particular essays. They're like, hey, you want to apply for engineering? What are some problems you want to solve? What's nice about this essay is that it doesn't say so much about engineering that it steals the content that would otherwise go there. So students often ask, do I have to write about my major? And the answer is no, but it's kind of nice. It kind of gives another, I would say, kind of like thematic thread that ties the thing together. It hits with the force of what I call like surprise and inevitability. Well, that's Aristotle by way of David Mamet. It's like, it's surprising, but also not surprising, kind of like a good movie. So when I say engineer, it's like, something settles when I read that. And I'm like, cool, that makes sense. Okay, what can you learn from this? I would recommend considering something other than common sports, common instruments, someone who inspired you, a single moment. I would recommend considering an uncommon topic. And it's not, I should say, more uncommon topic, because it's not like there are common and there are uncommon topics. There's such a huge range of things you can write about, but I think that you're more likely to stand out if you're writing about something that's less common. And then I think it's useful to think about raising a question at the start of your essay. And you can do that in so many different ways. Um, Values, 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 and how they manifested elsewhere in your life. So this is not about how, if you're writing about, for example, here are all the pets that I've had. I don't want to know about the pets, with respect. I'm sure they are wonderful animals, but I'm more interested in how they've helped you learn patience, self-care, etc. So only spend maybe 20% of your essay on the thing itself. Give specific examples to show the values, and insights, 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 especially at the ends of those paragraphs. I think that's where, even if the reader's skimming, they're kind of looking for, okay, did they land? Did they stick the landing? And I think you've got like several landings to stick at the ends of your paragraphs. Okay, so let's get creative. How do you brainstorm your own topic? Feel free to grab a pen if you like, or if you want, yes, you can use your phone, open up a notes app. Try not to check your texts or TikTok or whatever, Instagram, whatever social media you sometimes maybe choose. Um, but I'd love to come do two exercises here that are going to be relatively short and kind of fun to help you think about how could you maybe find an uncommon topic? Because, hey, wouldn't it be cool if here in just like 5 minutes you were able to find an essay topic? So I am pulling up an alarm, not an alarm, a timer on my phone, because I'm gonna show you how to do this first exercise. I'm gonna do it first, and then I'm gonna ask you to do it. So here's how it works. I'm gonna set a minute timer, and I'm gonna make a list of things that I love. So just watch. Actually, it's gonna be confusing if I show you this. So let me just do it first. All right. My name's Ethan, and I love teaching. I love singing. I love dancing. Um, I love taking a deep breath. I love pausing. I love awkward silences. I love I love when I laugh so hard that I cry. When I love laughing in situations where I'm not supposed to be laughing, like I don't know. I'm thinking of like growing up in the church. Like that's such the best laughter. I love some of the gifts that growing up in the church taught me. Um, oh, I love being in a country where I can like have freedom to choose what I practice, when don't practice. I love basketball. I love basketball games. I love the color blue on this. Oh, that's my time. Okay. Notice that I just kind of like riffed and went for it. That's kind of what I want you to do here. And I want you to just go for it. So in this exercise, quantity is as important, if not more important than quality. Okay. So what I want you to do is take a minute, and I'm going to time you. And even parents or counselors, if you're on this, I want you to try this. It's kind of fun. Make a random list of things that you love. Okay. Just make a random list of things you love. I'm going to show you what this has to do with college essays later. And don't think about it too much. 3, 2, 1, go. Got about a half a minute. It's still okay to start if you didn't start earlier. Feel free to get weird with this. Weird things that you love that maybe other people don't know about or don't necessarily love. All right, time's up. Next exercise, I'm going to give you a little bit more time for this. I want you to make a list of things that you know a lot about, things that you could geek out on, things that if you met someone at a party, you were in a social situation and they were like, I'm really into blank, you'd be like, oh, we should talk. I'm into that too. What do you know a lot about? For me, it's like college essays. It's like the voice, how the voice makes sound. I know a lot about movies, theater. I know a lot about etc. Your turn. 90 seconds. What do you know a lot about? What could you geek out on? Don't think about it too much. Go. Yes, parents too. What else do you know all about? Again, feel free to get obscure with these. The more niche, the better in some cases. All right, time's up. Congrats, you have your essay topic. I'm out. Bye. No. That's one extra. Well, that's really two exercises. And I want to do one more with you, and then I'm going to tell you how it turns into an essay idea. So this exercise, and we're going to spend maybe like a minute or so on it, is I want you to think about all the different ways that you identify and see if you can come up with at least five. Let me actually, you know what? I have a little identities list here where you can sort of think about different social identities. So see, I'm going to again give you like a minute and a half, and I want you to think about identities broadly. So see if you can come up with at least five. Let me start my timer here and make a list. And you could identify based on your interests, things you like, things you like to do, your activities. Could be gamer or friend or oldest sibling or youngest sibling or tall person or etc. List at least five. Bonus points if you can get to 10 identities. All right, time's up. Okay. So what does this have to do with college essays? Well, when you take, let me do the presenter view. There we go. When you take things that are as seemingly simple as your, I don't know, your interest in the way clean laundry smells, or in my case, maybe games. I love board games, as you can maybe guess from behind. If you start to connect these things to your values, suddenly things start to open up. So as an example, here's a little brainstorm that I did. Well, actually, you know what? Let me show you the thing first. Here's what I want you to do. Pick something from your I love or I know list or an identity. And I want you to list 4 or 5 values that you could connect to that thing. So for example, let me share my screen. If I wrote games here because I could say a lot about games, board games, and I've connected it to several values here. So I could connect games to a sense of belonging because I've learned a lot about belonging and not belonging through games. Family, because I play them a lot with my family and I heart them. Um, what else? Social justice. I played games that have helped me deepen my relationship to and understanding of social justice issues. So that's an essay. Suddenly, board games are ostensibly the topic, but I'm telling you about my core values through board games. So, your turn. I want you to think about just, we're going to do 90 seconds. Pick something that you love or know a lot about and see if you can connect it to 4 or 5 values. Do this now. Yes, parents too. We're brainstorming a personal statement right now. And see if you can come up with some maybe uncommon connections, like one value that someone else like that I wouldn't normally associate with this thing, but you could make the connection. That's what starts to get into insight. So there are going to be some obvious values. Give me a non-obvious value that you could connect to this thing or this identity. All right, time's up. If we had more time, I would be like, tell me about what you've got. What are you thinking? But essentially, what I'll say to you is, spoiler alert, each of these values could become a separate paragraph in an essay and could lead to something that, I don't know, maybe helps you stand out. Some of you, I don't know, maybe some percentage of you are like, I could totally write an essay about this. If we were in together in a room, I'd be like, raise your hand if you think you've got a college essay. And that's kind of how these things are built, or one of the ways, because that's not the only structure that can work. Some of you have been sitting on this call being like, yes, but Ethan, what if I have faced challenges? Then for you, I would recommend the narrative structure, which broadly speaking involves describing a challenge you faced and its impacts on you. That's about a third of the essay. What you did about it, like what you did to overcome that thing, and then what you learned, or not even overcome, but like what you did to sort of like work through it, or what you are doing to work through it. And then finally, what have you learned or what are you learning based on this challenge, whatever it is? There's an exercise that you can Google called the feelings and needs exercise that is about a 15-minute walkthrough. That's an exercise. If you face challenges and you're like, I think they might make for an interesting personal statement, I would totally recommend doing that exercise because it'll help give you a lot of information about whether or not there's a story here. We don't have time to do it today, just FYI. But there's a cool exercise inspired by nonviolent communication. Love the book. I don't know if y'all any NVC fans on here, but it's kind of the heart of this exercise. Okay. We don't have time to go through the whole essay, like analyze it today, because I want to make sure we've got time for Q&A. Okay. But broadly speaking, this is a student that I worked with, described challenges that he faced and the impacts on him. And then he talks about essentially, the impacts were that he had to like take care of his family more. And he had to like, take care of his little brother because his little brother was born. Some of the impacts were that he couldn't go on certain school trips and he was discouraged from meeting new people. Over time, however, there's a transition here where he talks about what he did about it. So he didn't have a father figure at home, so he became his own teacher, learned how to fix a bike, how to swim, became independent, so he would lessen the time and money that his mom had to spend raising him, which is like breaks my heart to read it even now. He works to get his grades up, starts becoming more involved at school, starts getting involved with others, starts contributing to the community, and ultimately says, I've done tons now, and can finally say I'm proud of that, which is a big deal for this student to say. Oh, we've got a little poll. Cool. Oh yeah, tell us who you are. We should have put that at the beginning. My bad. Yeah, great, thanks. And then he says, there's so much that I have yet to do. And he talks about there's sort of like hope for the future. But the main value that he focuses on is autonomy, because he says at the ending of his essay, which by the way, you can Google this essay, he says, I'll do as much as I can from now on, not because I have to, because I choose to, which I think is just such a beautiful, ending little phrase. Because in the previous part of the essay, he was like, basically, I feel like I have to do this. Like, this is what had to be done. So if you again, Google this, you'll see that there are elements of the feelings and needs exercise where he talks about the challenges, the effects, what he did about it, what he learned. And it's just it kind of he wrote it based on this exercise essentially. Um, and I'm kind of fast forwarding through it just a little bit again, so we have time for Q&A. But ultimately, what you get at the end of this essay is a sense of hope and this sense of like, I'll point out something else, that he has all these hopes and dreams for the future, and he doesn't like directly say it, but he's kind of hinting at the reader that now it's kind of in your hands. Like, not like specifically like, all of his hopes and dreams are, are going to be pinned on whether or not he gets into like a selective school. But some of these things, like dancing the tango and learning about perpetual motion and maybe even seeing the World Trade Center, are things that you could do in college. So he basically is sort of planting seeds. And as you look at the arc of the essay, you're like, oh, I really want these things for him. So it kind of puts it in the lap of the reader, which is really lovely. There's not a ton, I don't want to say too much more about this because it feels like the main takeaway from this is that there's not like a better way to write your essay. The student who wrote the escape rooms essay got into an awesome school, ended up at USC. This student ended up at Stanford, also a great school. And that, by the way, this isn't like if you write this essay, you'll get into this school, because the other school student also got into Yale and all the Columbia and all these other schools. Decided on USC ultimately because of money. But essentially, you can write about different things. That's one of the main takeaways, and still get into a great school. And it doesn't have to be a highly selective school either. Okay, I want to do Q&A. First, I want to tell you real quickly about some of the ways that we support students through this process. We do college essay and application coaching, and we're really proud of that. I have an awesome team of coaches that I work with, and we do all kinds of things. So we start with brainstorming. We do lots of really great exercises, including these. We help students figure out, how do you take these great ideas? How do you pick one that's going to be a little bit more uncommon? And then how do you actually turn it into something that is going to be something like an essay? We spend a lot of time, it's all over Zoom, and work to help students refine and up level. These essays, like I said, take time. They take a lot more than just a couple weeks to do. And in our sessions, we've got lots of specific exercises for helping you get into like the different sides of yourself. We have a process called the topic check, where we actually, once the topics are kind of decided, we have it shared with somebody else on our team internally. So it kind of helps to like explain it, to sort of, here's the logic of the application. And so that's this like get reviewed by experts. And then this, you'll get to work with the student, with your coach for a bunch of sessions. And then we have something called the almost done process, where you actually send it to someone who looks at it before it's going to be submitted and like, okay, is there anything else, any opportunities that we're missing? And we've worked with tons of students over the years. Folks are usually pretty happy. And yeah, if you're interested in that, we'll put a link to that in the chat. We also, if you're interested, we do college admission support. So this is one-on-one support if you're in 9th grade or 10th grade, and you're just interested in figuring out, for example, how do I figure out which courses that I should take? How do I figure out a testing plan? Should I test or not test? How do I figure out what I'm doing this summer? And then that segues into like, application work. What's cool about this in particular is that sometimes we meet students who are working on essays and applications, and they haven't gotten a lot of, done a lot of prep work before that. And so it's kind of like, once you're at the application phase, it's like, we're kind of working with what we've got. If you start earlier, sometimes you can, set yourself up for more opportunities and for greater success in terms of like the range of schools that you're able to qualify for and get into. For students who come from low-income households, we've got our Match Sliders Scholars Program. You're going to get links to all these in the chat here. But oh, I think we've already got some. Yeah. Oh, there's a Q&A coming in. But we've got our Match Sliders program, which is, you've got a link to that already above. So if you're like, I can't afford one-on-one support, don't worry. We got you. We got you. I've got my summer online courses that are coming up that I'm super excited about. By the way, if you've got questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. But I'm doing a 4-week course. It starts in just about a week and a half. And it's essentially what I call a flipped classroom course. Well, I don't call it that, but that's what it is. And let me just walk you through what we're doing. Week 1, we're going to talk about, I've gotten more exercises that I guide you through. We talk about how to decide on an actual topic. I play a game called, Is This a Good Topic or Not? And I like help students pick topics. In week 2, we talk about outlining and writing. I've got a really comprehensive tool that I share with you so that you can like actually go through the steps and outline, and how do you know if your essay is going to work or not. I also model, I give feedback on essay ideas, and I model, I'm trying to make you like into like, think like college essay guy. And then we get into revising. How do you up level the paragraphs? How do you know ultimately if your essay is flowing? And then finally, how do you know when the essay is done? Usually in about a month, you can write a pretty solid draft, and that's how long the course is. Also, we have pay what you can spots for, if you identify as low income. And then that course segues into another course on the application and supplemental essays. So for this one, we basically walk through not just the personal statement, but essentially all the other parts of the application. So let me scroll down. In week one, we talk about how do you create all the pieces of your application. Like now that you've got your personal statement figured out, what goes where? What are the other topics and where do they go in the supplemental essays? Because if you're applying to selective schools, you're going to have to write not just one essay, but probably a bunch of them. I talked to you about how to write a super essay, which is like an essay that's going to save you a lot of time and can be reused. Then we talk about the other elements that I mentioned just briefly, your activities list, your brag sheet, your additional information section where you can put all kinds of other things. Some schools ask for something like called the Why Us essay. We'll get to that in depth. And then in week 3, week 4, this is actually week 4, we talk about, sorry, it is week 3, extracurricular essays and supplementals. There's lots of specific and a range of kinds of essays that we get into. And that week 3 times out with August 1st. It's when all the supplemental essays have been released. So there's an opportunity to like collect all of your essays and then discuss specifically what questions you have about the ones you're going to be working on. And then we get into short answers. And finally, it's like, okay, how do you know that your application is doing its job? The final week of the course, students are creating their almost done docs and they're like working, to like basically be like, okay, I think this is what my application is going to look like, which is really exciting. And yeah, hope that some of y'all can join. Again, we've got pay what you can spots for low income students, and you can get a refund within 30 days if you don't like it. So the difference between these is like, it comes down to budget. If students can afford to work one-on-one, great. If you can't, and you're like, hey, I think I can do it all for a course, great, would love to have you. And that's not it. We've got a little offer thing here that if for the first 5 people on this webinar who sign up for one-on-one, we're going to do $500 off, and we're going to use the code scholarships so that we know that you came from this webinar. And also because we aren't doing that anywhere else. And you can just schedule a call. We'll just put the link in the chat once more. And then, or if you're interested in the course, the first 10 folks who sign up for the course will get 20% off the first course and then 50% off the second one. And it'll happen, the second update will happen auto-magically when you register. So we'll put those links in the chat. That's it. Let's do Q&A. We've got about 10 minutes, which is great. I love when we've got 10 minutes. So I'm going to pause for a second to see what questions you have, or some of you are like filling out the link because you're like, I want to be one of the first 5. I'll get to the questions in just a minute. Sometimes if I start answering the questions too soon, people don't have time to think of questions. So I'm actually going to just pause for another half minute. Totally, Ansley, I got you. The other thing we're going to do in a couple minutes is we'll give away a free book for those of you who filled out the form. To find the form, just scroll back up in the chat. It's at the top. Okay. Let's answer some questions. So the first one is, how should a personal statement differ? How should a personal statement differentiate a competitive applicant in ultra selective admissions like the Ivies? What tips do you have to craft that special essay? Okay. So I think for some schools, I shouldn't name names, but there are 2 schools that I know of, but they've told me this directly, that they're like, the essays matter a little bit less. We're mostly going based on grades and in some cases test scores. And this is 2 schools out of 4,000 that have told me this. Some schools don't even require essays, which tells you they don't care about essays. But some barely use them. And these are often less selective schools. And so for those schools, the essay maybe matters less. And what I mean by this is like, if the school has, for example, greater than a 50% chance of acceptance, it could be that the essay is going to matter a little bit less. Okay. But to your question, how does it differentiate a competitive applicant? Some of the things that I walked through in that escape rooms essay will apply here. And some of the things in particular are insights that are revealing things that weren't elsewhere in the application. Another thing is connecting to the school's institutional priorities. So certain schools are looking for certain things, like, for example, Caltech is looking for students who are creative and who are collaborative and who are, of course, love math and love science, but also, they're looking for students who like have an outlet. And, different schools are looking for different things. So I would say if you're really interested in Caltech, making sure that you show your creativity and your ability to collaborate. And a lot of times their supplemental essays will kind of point you in the direction of what they're looking for. So I think there's an example, like that's a good example actually, is Caltech is like, hey, what's a time when you've collaborated with others? That's been a prompt the last couple of years. So they're looking for collaborators because they're putting together a community, right? So insight, which is to say, surprise us, but also some of those positive character attributes that are connected to what the school is looking for can be really helpful. The other thing that I think often helps, to be really honest with you, is several drafts, because oftentimes that first draft or that third draft is like pretty good, but it's like the 10th draft is better. I don't think every student needs to spend 10 drafts, but if you're applying to a selective school, oftentimes those, like the essays that you see on the website, people are like, oh my gosh, those are they're so good. Well, oftentimes they went through a bunch of drafts. So I think oftentimes it's like just like time spent. Like when you look at a nice piece of art, you're like, oh, that clearly took a lot of time. And I think that's true oftentimes for essays. Okay. Emory requires 2 supplemental essays. Is that common? Yeah, I mean, it is for selective schools. So some schools, Northeastern, somewhat selective, has no essays. Stanford has 8 essays, 3 250-word ones, and then some others. So it kind of depends on the school. They've got some short answers. It also depends on what you call an essay. Like, some schools, like the University of California schools, they have 4, they don't call them essays. They're 350-word personal insight questions. That's going to be different from what we've talked about here today. But they're not essays, but you're like, well, 350 words, that feels like an essay. But usually these supplemental essays will go somewhere between 150 and like 650 words. So yeah, I would say on average, if you're applying to 10 schools, once you create your essay tracker, I'll show you what an essay tracker looks like. Essay tracker. Once you create your essay tracker, you might see that like, Northwestern has 1 prompt, and then USC has like a bunch of short answers, and it might have 3 supplemental essays. But once you create this, oftentimes students are like, what? I have to write that many essays? And so it's somewhere between, depending on how many schools you're applying to, yeah, take the number of schools that you're applying to and multiply it times 2. That's a pretty good number, but you'll be able to reuse them in many cases. Can it be seen as trying too hard if you choose a topic that's so obscure and different? Not if you do it well. To be honest, like, I mean, it could be. Like you could choose something really obscure, but I'd be hard pressed. You'd have to show me. I'd have to know what the topic is, but like I don't know, like what I guess is what my curiosity is, because if it shows skills, qualities, values, and interests, the reader's going to be into it, hopefully. Is it okay if my college major doesn't really work with my essays and I exclude it? Yeah, of course. You don't have to connect it. They might wonder in certain situations, like if you, for example, write all about your love of pottery and it's all pottery all the time, and then your activities list is all about pottery, and you're like, well, they're like, wow, this isn't creative, it's an artist, and your chosen major is math. They might be like, wait, what? I thought you were like way into pottery. So it does need to kind of make sense. And the way to do that is, broadly speaking, make sure that the values that you're showing in the essay could connect to the major, so that they're like, okay, I see how your skills in X, Y, Z, and Q could apply in this other major. But if it is going to be kind of like a random connection, I would try and find a way to maybe mention it briefly. If you know your major, you don't have to know your major, and you don't have to like necessarily pick one. You can, in some cases, apply undecided. Oh gosh. Depend what I was going to say is it depends on certain schools, it's harder to get into them based on the major. So like, these are called impacted majors. Like if you apply to UC Berkeley, it's harder to get in for engineering and for things like computer science. For University of Washington, it's much harder to get in for computer science, especially out of state. So that's something to think about is like, is it more important for you to get into the school or get into the major? And that could shape the way that you write the essay. I know that's complicated. It's a great question to ask your counselor. If I want to write about a topic like food, what are some ways I can connect to my personal values? Ooh. Um, okay, here, let me show you. I'm going to take you inside. So this is the tool that, um, here, let me show you a quick food essay. This is the tool that I use on the course. Okay, so this food essay began, this is a student that I worked with a few years ago, ended up getting into a lot of awesome selective schools. Food is a somewhat common topic, but he brainstormed values that you might not expect in a food essay. So he talks about vulnerability and talks about experimenting and trying new things. And he talks about rest and family. And of course, family might connect to food. But these other things, basically the short answer to your question is like connected to values that we might not expect in a food essay. And he uses lots and lots of specific details, provides insight throughout and like some nice vulnerability to show how food has shaped him. So I guess the main tip I would give you is go to that values list. You can literally Google it, values exercise, and go, okay, what could I connect food to that might surprise the reader? That's my short answer. Would writing about the struggles growing up in a rural town with no after-school activities for kids in the community be considered trauma dumping? What makes it trauma dumping is not necessarily the topic, it's the treatment of the topic. So what do I mean by that? If you were to just talk about your challenges for the whole essay and you don't talk about what you did about it, what you learned, then yeah, I could see that. But if you, and by the way, this is something that, potentially could go in your additional info section where you could basically be like, I grew up in a rural town with no after school activities. And then a bullet point on like how that impacted you. And then what I did about it is I formed this club or I started donating my time in this particular way or volunteered for this. And then here's what I learned through that experience. And you just put those in bullet points. Like that sounds like an amazing inclusion to your additional info section. Maybe you even find a way to work it into your personal statement. But yeah, could it be a topic? Yeah, potentially. But it sounds like it might be an extracurricular activity essay, which I would use for more of a supplemental essay because it sounds like it would be limited to this particular struggle and a particular project, whatever you did about it. How would you recommend a student applying for over 20 schools pace out their essay writing? I'm guessing you might be an international student applying from outside the US. Um, I would start soon, like now, on your personal statement and see if you can get your early essays done before August 1st. So like in the next 2 months, you're like, start now. Now is a great time to start. Get your early schools done. And then when the other ones, when they're released officially. So there are some essays that won't change much. Like if it's a YS essay, chances are they'll have a YS essay again. But I would get as much as you can done over the summer so that you're not really struggling in the fall because you're going to be so busy in the fall. Any tips for cutting down college essays to be in the word restriction? Yeah, if you Google cutting words college essay guide, there's a whole blog on that. So that I'm going to refer you to the blog because we're at time. So that's the short answer. Is it okay if the insights are a little cliche, even if they're true to you? Even if the insights, what makes it a cliche, Sophie, isn't the meaning, it's the wording. So if you feel like it's something that is like, oh, that could be in a Hallmark card, just take a second and go, how could I rephrase this so it's a little bit more personal, a little bit more surprising? It might be that you connect to a value that we don't expect. That's a short version of how to do that. But I would say, yeah, scan your essay. If it seems like someone else could have said it, I would delete it. Can your personal statement carry on to other schools you're applying to, or do you need to write one for each one? Great question, Tanya. If you're applying via the Common App, you're applying to private schools, chances are you're going to reuse that one for multiple schools. In some cases, if you're changing your major for the schools you're applying to, you might want to change the essays, the last paragraph. But in many cases, you're going to want to write one essay for all the schools, not all the schools, but all the schools that are on the Common App. Different schools, though, like University of Texas, University of California, MIT, Georgetown, are going to have separate applications. In some cases, you can reuse your personal statement, but not in all. Like you can reuse it for Georgetown, you can't for MIT, you can't for the UCs. You might be able to for UT, depending on what you write about. Is there a sample essay tracker you could share? Indeed, if you Google essay tracker college essay guy, you'll find it. Does my personal statement have to match up with a question on the Common App? I would say pick topic of your choice, because topic of your choice is the most open-ended. I would brainstorm not based on the prompts, because admission readers, the dozens that I've spoken to about this, they're like, we don't care. Pick topic of your choice. And I would say it's something like almost half of students choose topic of your choice. Is it okay for students to reuse essays for schools? Yes, Ansley, I would recommend it. For schools with short essays like MIT, should we start all responses with stories? You don't need to. No, I would say go more informational, more direct with the MIT prompts. Finally, will the slides be emailed? I'm not going to email the slides, but you'll get a recording. That's it. We're at time. Thanks, y'all. I'm so glad you were here. I appreciate you. And look forward to connecting with some of you on the course. Remember, there's no financial barrier to joining. So much love. And yeah, hope you have a beautiful, beautiful evening. I'm going to go to a play now. All right, bye.